Welcome everyone. I'm Jacqueline Chow, graduate intern here at Blaffer. Thank you so much for joining us for the second day of the MFA Thesis exhibition Artist Talks. There will be one more artist talk after today on next Tuesday, April 16th from noon to 1:30. And the MFA Thesis exhibition will be on view until April 18th. Today we have with us 5 of the artists who are in the exhibition. There's Sierra Rose, Erica Reed Lee, Hannah Gould, Ashley Anika Herndon, Alejandro Sescos. The artists will speak about their work, and there will be a short Q&A at the end of each artist's talk. After all the talks, we'll have lunch in the cafe area. We'll have some chairs around. A bunch of you are already sitting in it, but we're also going to move between galleries. We're going to be downstairs, and we're going to also go upstairs as well. So let's begin with Sierra. Houston-based illustrator and graphic designer, Sierra Rose creates work rooted in Black American fashion and cultural expression. She holds a BFA in illustration from Rochester Institute of Technology, where she also briefly studied biotechnology. Currently a practicing designer at Afrique Noire Magazine, Rose's work has been featured at Blaffer Art Museum, TSU Flex Space Gallery, Elgin Street Studios, and the Houston Organization for Political Education. Sierra.
Okay. First of all, again, my name is Sierra Rose. I'd like to thank the Blaffer for putting together this event, and also all of you guys for coming out to hear me speak about this lovely work behind us. So I have a little booklet that I'll be reading out of because y'all know me, I can yap sometimes. So to stay on track, I'll be reading out of this. But yes. So I've always been drawn to the ways Black Americans express themselves through fashion and personal style. It's something that has inspired me for a long time, but it's also something that feels deeply personal to how I move through the world. For me, fashion has always worked like a language. Sometimes it says things that I feel proud to express, other times it says things that I don't always have the words for. And I think for a lot of Black Americans, style works this way too. It can be a self-expression, but it can also be protection. Sometimes it's about adaptation, especially in spaces where Black bodies are already being read, judged, and misunderstood before we even get the chance to speak. Because of that, the way I present myself has always felt really intentional. In a world where appearance shapes perception so quickly, clothing became one of the few ways we get to control the narrative. It stops just being clothes and becomes something much deeper. A lot of that understanding also comes from how I grew up. Being raised in the South in a church-centered community, clothing was always tied to pride, respectability, and identity. I learned really early that what I wore said something before I ever opened my mouth. On top of that, having a more alternative interest as a Black child made me even more aware of how I wanted to visually define myself outside of stereotypes. So this body of work seems, which is all of this, comes out of all of that. It looks at how fashion and style can work as methods of resistance, education, cultural preservation within the Black American narrative. So, just kind of a little background about me. Growing up, I was always interested in clothing and fashion and honestly anything I could really attach to my body. Piercings, tattoos, dyeing my hair, shaving my hair. I've done most of it. I think it mostly started with hats and like glasses for me. If you know me, I'm rather blind and I've been wearing glasses since I was about 2. And they were always very cute and I never broke them. It was a very serious business for me. And then for hats, I was kind of bald as a baby. So my mom kept me in a matching hat and like set. So once again, very cute. And yeah, so I've always really had this relationship to adornment. I remember being about 12, 13 and repurposing thrifted pieces or reworking old things that I thought needed a little bit more edge. Were any of them ready for Fashion Week? Absolutely not, but I really loved that they had me on them. They always felt like me. I love that the clothes could communicate things for me, what music I liked, what shows I was into, what kind of energy I wanted to give off. Clothes really were an extension of my identity. But I will say, despite me having these kind of deep roots with clothing and fashion, I never thought it would become such a big kind of inspiration for my creative practice. It wasn't until about my second year in this program that in my digging around and kind of just creative inquiries, I was led to the work and research of African American fashion historians, people like Jonathan M. Square and Tanisha C. Ford, and then the designs and works of Dapper Dan or costume designers like Ruth E. Carter. That's when I realized this love I had for clothing and style-based identities had much deeper roots than I originally understood. From there, I started researching different Black American style eras, and that became the framework of the 5 collages behind us. What started out as personal education turned into something so big that I ended up documenting all of the material that I was researching in a book, and that's kind of what kick-started this entire research. It's called Seams as well. But it's honestly just riddled with my personal reactions and kind of emotions I have with the various style movements that I was researching. And then in that process, I started building a loose timeline for myself. So we start at the furthest piece over here, which is Black Dandyism. Then we go to Sunday's Best. We have Black Power. We have streetwear, which is my favorite one. And then we have Afrofuturism, which I see as kind of like the present. What became really interesting to me was how the purpose of each of the clothing shifts across these various eras. The earlier forms were often rooted in assimilation and respectability politics, while the later ones moved towards a more radical self-expression. But what I found the most important is that none of these eras were cleanly separated. Even as the visual language changed, traces of both respectability and radical self-expression continue to exist across all of them. And that's what led me to Exquisite Seams, which is this book back here, which lets viewers mix and match imagery from all 5 style eras. It's really just a visual way of showing how these histories continue to speak to each other. So in conclusion, I think when I look back at that 12 or 13-year-old girl who was cutting up shirts that they looked crazy, by the way, y'all, they did never look good. Cutting up shirts and, trying to give them a bit more like power or edge. I didn't really have the language for what I was doing. I just knew it felt important, and I knew it felt good to make something feel more like me and the things that I represented. And now looking back, I understand that I was practicing something much bigger than myself. I was participating in a tradition that Black Americans have been practicing for generations, using what we put on our bodies to say, I'm here, I matter, and I get to decide how I want to be seen. And that's really what Seams is all about. It's not just about the clothing, it's about the quiet and not so quiet ways Black people have used style to survive, resist, mourn, celebrate, and imagine new possibilities for ourselves. Whether that looks like a perfectly pressed suit for a Sunday service, a dashiki worn in defiance, or a custom Dapper Dan piece that flips luxury back on itself, every stitch carries intention. Sorry. Every look is saying something, even in moments where people weren't given the space or safety to say it out loud. What has always stayed with me through this research is how often Black style gets separated from the history that gives its meaning. It gets flattened into trends, aesthetics, or spectacles. And in that process, the politics, the survival, and the care inside of it can disappear. But this work pushes back against that. Seams is really my way of saying histories live in the body. They live in the way we dress, style it, protect it, and celebrate it. Sometimes when words weren't enough or weren't safe, the body became the text, and Black Americans have always known how to write. So for me, this work is really a reminder that Black dress culture never exists in a vacuum. Every silhouette, every texture, every accessory, every choice is rooted in something larger. And when we try to overlook that, we miss the power of our history. Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra, for telling us about your work. So now we're in the Q&A section of the artist talk, and to start off, I have a question for you. So you already mentioned that your project started as a personal education and kind of diving into your own personal connection to fashion and identity. And I'm interested in if you can tell us more about the sources of the image in your work and how did you decide on these references?
Yes, so I think most of it started off with me researching and reading a lot of books. And from there, they would have images in there. And the one that really, really kicked it off and I started pulling images from was a book called Liberated Threads by Tanisha C. Ford. And she kind of introduced me to this concept of soul style. And then kind of from there, I tried to find either, obviously I dig through the bibliography in the back of that book and just started grabbing references that she was pulling from. And then when I started kind of landing on the actual style, like eras that I wanted to focus on, I came across Monica C. Miller, I believe, and she is a fashion historian, and she has a book called Slaves to Fashion. It was actually the Met Gala's theme for their, for the costume design. I don't know, you guys know the Met Gala. But yeah, I pulled from that, and I got the chance to go see that exhibition in person last year, which was really, really inspirational, and I got the exhibition book too. So a lot of the images come from there. And then the last kind of place I was pulling images from was another fashion historian named Jonathan in Square. He runs a one-line archive called Fashioning of the Self, and he just posts various pictures of Black Americans in different clothing, and kind of either gives a little bit of history behind them, of course who the people are. So it was in kind of spaces like that that I began pulling images to use. I spent a lot of time in the Library of Congress pictures as well, but most of them come from fashion archive pages from the historians and books I was reading.
Nice, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes.
I love these pieces so much. I think you did a great job. And I'm just curious, I know you're in graphic design, but would you ever do something like a fashion show, like an artistic sort of fashion show? That be something in your practice in the future?
Nice. Are you gonna ever do a fashion show?
So I know my strengths in designing clothes is probably not one of them. I think if someone gave me the task, I'd be fine at it, but I've never imagined myself doing anything like that. I feel like I would be more so on the styling end of it all. Like if people came to me with the clothing and the items and they were like, make a look from this, I could get something together, but creating the actual pieces, I don't know too much about, but it is something that I do pull from. I look at a lot of fashion illustrations and things like that, and referencing my figures and things, so it's definitely a sort of inspiration, but I don't know if I would be the person cut out for that, honestly. Yeah. Yeah.
What was your inspiration for these abstract figures? We have the pieces of clothing, but the actual proportions is really collaged together. And I was curious what the inspiration behind all that was.
Like the composition, the inspiration for compositions?
Yes.
I think in the start of it, this kind of piecing and weirdness came from me strictly just cutting out things that I liked and then figuring out how I could merge them together. And then later on, I remember talking with several of my committee members, and we were kind of talking about putting more intention in terms of the placement of things. So specifically for the first one, the eyes being in the torso is kind of a reference to that lowered gaze and that lower, just kind of trying to make yourself seem like you're in the background, which a lot of the times in that era of Black Dandyism, starting in the 1850s and 90s is really what I was looking at. I'm pretty sure it was started much earlier than that, but that's the era I was looking in. There was a lot of assimilation and trying to blend in with the normal people. So that's why we have the grays lowered from the head. Shoes for eyes, because there was another piece that was heavily associated with the wear. Yeah, it was just more so about kind of trying to find visual cues to reference those unspoken rules of how the Black body should exist in society without bringing attention to itself or, standing out too loudly with their culture and things like that. So, yeah.
You said the streetwear one is your favorite. How come?
Well, y'all know me, I'm often dressed like John Cena, so that's probably it. I don't know, I think when I look at this, well, for one, the process of making this like time and a bit more like thought to it. But this one came rather smoothly for me. Honestly, I was thinking about my brother while I was making this, so I think that is also a reason. But yeah, I like what this collage also stands for. There's a lot of kind of notions towards the Black businessman and the Black professional, and I feel like a lot of that is rooted in clothing, specifically streetwear. And that's just something that I've always really admired about like Black Americans, is that they will have a business and they will put it out there for their community, and it will, you know, it'll serve its purpose. And I think that's honestly why I was really drawn to this one. Also, like I said, I just really like streetwear too. The silhouettes of the clothes and everything. I like that it almost feels like an armor, but then it also feels like don't mess with him actually too. So it's I think I like the double side of it all too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a personality.
Yeah. A lot of people mention they like kind of like the rhythm and like sway that this one has, which honestly probably is because I listened to a lot of 2000s like Southern hip hop too. So I was watching like Manny Fresh music videos and stuff, and they were just, that's how they were moving. That's the vibe. It was of course always this level of swag and rhythm to everything. So I think that was just how that one came out.